The 2024 election season is ramping up, and in 1 year, the U.S. will choose its next president. Time is flying.
Yeah, it's crazy. One of the most decisive voting blocks in the 2024 election will be the young vote. And here to discuss are the two youngest major party chairs in the country, North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton and Alabama Republican Chair John Wahl. Thank you both for being here.
Good to see you guys.
Great to be on the show.
Anderson, I'd like to start with you. What do you believe are the biggest issues for young Democrats, that the ones that they care about the most going into the 2024 election?
Yeah, from being on college campuses recently, especially as we've seen from the UNC Chapel Hill incidents over the last 2 months of just gun violence on their college campuses, and also mental health crisis on our college campuses right now. Both of those two issues are going to play a huge role going into 2024, and speaking to those issues about what are we going to do going forward, and especially on the aspect of also affordable housing for young folks, looking at how can they actually create a livelihood for themselves going forward.
All right, John, what are the major concerns for young Republicans?
Well, and I feel like the concerns for young Republicans are very similar to actually a lot of the concerns that young Democrats are going to have, or people in general across the country. I think we see the economy play a major role here. You know, people are struggling to put food on the table, to make ends meet. And that's what I'm hearing a lot from young people. Also concerned about foreign policy coming up. You know, we see the unrest in the Middle East. There's been a major shift between the two parties, kind of over foreign policy recently. And I think that's something where the Republicans' defense, but also knocking us into conflicts, is something that's very appealing to young voters.
Anderson, there's always so much talk about the young vote. Do you think young voters are actually going to show up to the polls in this next election? And what's it going to take for Democrats to get those voters?
Yeah, I think that they will. But I also think it's going to be a challenge and something that we're going to have to work for over the next year and a half. And I tell people that, you know, young voters are not monolithic. And I think that John could probably attest to that, too, of that, you know, our generations, because I'm Gen Z and he represents millennials over here. And we figured that out backstage. But I think the two of us together are looking at, you know, what party and also what presidential candidate, right, is going to speak to, and not just speak to, but also talk to the issues that I think young people face the most, which is looking at, as to John's point too, the economy, and how are we going to make sure that folks have a livable minimum wage going forward from now? How do we make sure that they have the ability to buy a house? How do we make sure that young people are able to take advantage of what we've always promised them that they're going to in this country?
John, around this time, we love research, we love polls, we love studies. According to a Harvard study, it found that young voters may be growing even more liberal on issues like abortion and climate change. How should the Republican Party respond to this?
Well, you know, this is a fascinating one for me because I am a leptozoologist by trade. So I'm a butterfly farmer. I raise butterflies for zoos and exhibits around the country. And with that, you know, I care a lot about our environment. You know, that's something that I love, that's important to me. And so I think better communication from the Republican Party, that the Republican Party does care about conservation. We do care about the environment, and we want to help things be better for the people of America and also for our climate in general. You know, this is not a thing that needs to be one party versus the other. And by that I mean going past just global warming. You know, global warming, the concern there, a lot of it is carbon. And if you look at carbon dioxide, it's a natural product. I'm also concerned about what China is putting into the environment. And I think we need to look past just global warming to other chemicals as well. So, you know, with abortion, it's an interesting trend because I think what we can all agree on, and we should always look for consensus where we can agree, is that abortion is a tragedy. You know, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, you know, abortion is a tragedy, and it's something that no one wants to be put in that position. And I think what you're seeing from younger Republicans is the answer to that, which is compassion for both mothers, but then also an understanding that there is, you know, in the case of an unborn baby, there's also fundamental rights, and that we should keep life as sacred, and life does deserve to be protected at every level.
A lot of debate around abortion for sure going on. Anderson, the other thing people are really talking about is President Biden's age. He's going to turn 81 later this month. His age has become a sticking point. I'm curious how young voters, Democrats specifically, view his age.
Yeah, I think I'm so sorry. To go back to that abortion conversation for a second, I think that we're finding that young people are becoming more and more progressive on that issue because they realize they don't want anyone telling them what to do with their bodies. And that is where I stick with it. That's where I think young people are sticking with it, regardless of what party you identify with, is that you want the choice to be up to yourself because that's your own individual freedom. To President Biden's question on his age, I think that, you know, people look at me all the time. They go, "You're 25. Are you excited to vote for a man that's 80? Yes, I am, because I think he has done amazing things with the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure bill for places like where I grew up. And I know that that's my own salient piece of this is that I'm from a rural part of the country that is getting historic investments right now. And so I see a president that believes in places like where I'm from. But I also think that folks have got to realize this president has had the most historic changes when it comes to climate change in our country, when it comes to acting on gun violence prevention. You know, the first office of gun violence prevention in the White House right now exists because of this president. And I think that's so important because it realizes, and it should show young people, right, that this president is listening to you. And it's hard, I think, because so many young people in politics coming up in it, and especially me coming into a position like this, I always thought that my voice was not valued and that people didn't hear me and that I wasn't being listened to. And so to have a presidential candidate and a vice president right now that's going around to college campuses and saying, I want to hear from you, that's the most important thing that we could have people be doing.
All right, John Wahl and Anderson Calayton, good to have you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.